Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for an important water update. As you know, just last week, in collaboration with my fellow governors of California and Nevada, we submitted a historic plan to stabilize the Colorado River over the next 3 years. Without this partnership, the federal government would have forced drastic cuts to Arizona's water use. Instead, we successfully negotiated voluntary, compensated conservation efforts that will build back our reservoirs while allowing cities, states, tribes, and farmers to have a say in their water future. Today, I'm here with water policy experts and leaders from the business community as I announce continued actions that my administration is taking to secure Arizona's water future. With a plan in place to stabilize the Colorado River and our reservoirs on the Salt and Verde rivers full to the brim, it's now time to focus on protecting our groundwater supplies. For generations, groundwater has supported Arizona communities. In times of shortage, it is groundwater that we turn to as a backup. In many communities throughout Arizona, it is the only water supply available, and so we must manage it wisely. Arizona has a long tradition of water stewardship. A cornerstone of our success has been the 100-year Assured Water Supply Program. No other state has such a high standard of water security, and it's been a foundation of certainty for our state. Families and businesses from around the world come to Arizona in part because they know we are serious about water management and that we are the leader in safeguarding groundwater supplies. Today, I'm directing the Arizona Department of Water Resources to publish the Phoenix Active Management Area Groundwater Model, a sophisticated, peer-reviewed tool that uses the best available science to assess our aquifers. Using this model, ADWR has produced a forecast that evaluates groundwater conditions for the Phoenix AMA over the next century as part of Arizona's 100-year Assured Water Supply Program. This 100-year groundwater study expands and improves upon the Hacienda report that I unsealed in my State of the State address in January, which had been withheld for years by the prior administration. This Phoenix AMA groundwater model and 100-year forecast are critical tools that help us look into the future and proactively manage our water supplies. It allows us to continue to provide certainty for businesses and communities and foster sustainable water use, and economic growth. The results of this study show that we need to take action once again. If we do nothing, we could face a 4% shortfall in groundwater supplies over the next 100 years. We have to close this gap and find efficiencies for our water use, manage our aquifers wisely, and increase our utilization of renewable supplies. That's why, as required by law, we will pause approvals of new assured water supply determinations that rely on pumping groundwater, ensuring that we don't add to any future deficit. This pause will not affect growth within any of our major cities where robust water portfolios have been proven to cover current and future demands. I cannot emphasize that enough. This pause will not affect industrial development or construction of the more than 80,000 lots outside of our designated cities for which certificates have already been issued. It is also incredibly important to note that the model relates only to groundwater and does not concern surface water supplies, which are a significant source of renewable water for our state. What the model ultimately shows is that our water future is secure. The Assured Water Supply Program is working. Water supplies for homeowners and businesses are protected. Growth has been planned for and will continue. For decades, Arizona has boomed, growing our population by 7 times and our economic output 16 times over, all while using the same amount of water as we did in the 1950s. We have shown that we can grow responsibly with a common sense approach that puts conservation, recycling, and sustainable water use first. That's why today I am also announcing that the state is making a $40 million investment in water through the creation of the Arizona Water Resiliency Fund, building on our continued momentum after last week's Colorado River announcement. This fund will be administered by ADWR with the goal of promoting water conservation and the sustainable management of our groundwater supplies. This is a down payment on my commitment to building a sustainable water future. It will not be a complete answer, but it's an important first step in the work that we have to do. Additionally, 2 weeks ago, I convened my Water Policy Council, which has a roster of experts and stakeholders from cities, tribes, industry, and business who will provide policy recommendations on exactly this. In the coming months, we'll be working together to chart the policy path forward to build an Arizona that grows sustainably for generations to come and is the best place in the country to work, live, and raise a family. Today, I am reaffirming Arizona's commitment to best-in-class water management and continued investment in our water future. My message to Arizonans is this: we are not out of water, and we will not be running out of water, because, as we have done so many times before, we will tackle the water challenges that we face with integrity and transparency. I won't bury my head in the sand, cut corners, or put short-term interests over the state's long-term prosperity. This proven approach is how we built a thriving Arizona, and I know it's how we'll continue to prosper long into the future. And with that, I'll turn it over to Director Buchowski.
Thank you, Governor. So the Assured Water Supply Program is one of the crown jewels of the 1980 Groundwater Management Act. The program provides a level of water supply certainty for homeowners that is unmatched anywhere in the United States. The program and the certainty it provides is why our homeowners have secure water supplies despite continued drought for over 20 years in Arizona and in the Colorado River Basin. A critical component of the Assured Water Supply Program is DWR's use of the best available science in making determinations that a 100-year renewable water supply is in fact available when subdivisions are proposed and built. The best available science is evolving, and ADWR's numerical groundwater models are an outgrowth of that evolution. Today, we announced that the updated Phoenix Active Management Area numerical groundwater model is complete and that the modeling report is being published. This latest version of the Phoenix AMA model is now the gold standard for making assured water supply determinations in the Phoenix Active Management Area. The model report provides transparency with the structure, robustness, and accuracy of the model itself, and also for the projections of aquifer conditions a century into the future in 2121. In its assessment of the current conditions in the Phoenix Active Management Area, the model shows the effectiveness of the 1980 Groundwater Management Act and the positive results of water management decisions the state of Arizona and its water users have made since the act was passed. It definitively shows that the Assured Water Supply Program is working as intended. The modeling projections through 2121 also tell an important story. There are areas in the active management area where projected water levels fall to less than 1,000 feet below land surface. That is the limit under the Assured Water Supply Program. Areas where unmet demand is daylighting are increasing in the projections, especially along the margins of the aquifer and where bedrock is outcropping. Projections also show that water in storage will decrease by about 39 million acre feet, an indication that groundwater is being used in AMA that is mined groundwater. The modeling projection outcomes are not unexpected, and in fact, the magnitude of these outcomes is less than most stakeholders expected. While the modeling report does show that Assured Water Supply Program is working as intended, it also identifies challenges facing us. The publication of the modeling report is a catalyst to allow stakeholders to work together to find appropriate prescriptions to build upon our successes in managing groundwater in the Phoenix Active Management Area while maintaining the strong consumer protection elements of the Assured Water Supply Program. As Governor Hobbs stated previously, her Water Policy Council is the venue for addressing those issues and moving forward. That concludes my remarks. Thanks.
All right, thanks everybody. We're gonna start Q&A now.
Okay,
Howie.
I'll start with the water stuff, and we'll put everything else up till later. I was part of the earlier briefing, and one of the things that seems to be a big gap is this is all based on an assumption that there'll be no further cuts in Colorado River water. Given what we've been through historically, is it responsible to go ahead and plan for the next 100 years of future based on something that may not be there? I mean, they're talking even to the point of the Colorado River being dead pool. Is that responsible?
Well, the announcement we made last week gives us a chance to look forward and plan strategically for Colorado River management post-2026. And I think that announcement, together with the Water Policy Council, set us up for success in being able to responsibly manage and steward our water as we have for decades in Arizona.
But I'm not sure that still answers the question. Now, post-2026, we don't know how much we're getting. We're already 4% below anticipated demand, and that's with the Colorado River water coming in. I know we've taken some cuts, and I know it was a nice wet year, but we can't count on that given what we've seen historically here in the desert. There's 7 inches of rain most years in the desert. How can you rely on the fact that we may not have that Colorado River water? Tom, okay.
So I'll add to what Governor Hobbs said, Howie, and essentially, we have stabilized the system through 2026. We do not know yet what post-2026 is going to look like in terms of our Colorado River supplies. We do have things like the Arizona Water Banking Authority that will back up some of those cuts moving forward. As I talked about in my remarks, this model is evolving. We have an opportunity to continue to improve this model as we know what will happen post-2026 after that's negotiated and adopted by the federal government, probably in 2025 or even in late 2026.
And I'll just add that Arizona is the only state in the West that has as forward-looking of a assured water supply as we do. No other state has 100 years, and that is exactly how we're going to manage this situation.
Okay. Right there.
Well, yeah, then how do we know that a more growing population won't disrupt that? As he said, we stabilized water through 2026. It's not that far away.
Well, that's why we're planning for the future. That's why we have a 100-year assured water supply. That's why we're doing this modeling, so we know that we're accurate in the certificates that we're issuing. We have 80,000 unbuilt homes that have assured water supply certificates within the Phoenix AMA, and that is not going to be affected.
Right there.
Governor, or Tom, can you tell me who is affected by the 4% decline?
It's areas that areas within the Phoenix AMA that rely on groundwater. So Phoenix has a designated assured water supply. This is not going to affect any growth in Phoenix. This is not going to affect existing homeowners, existing businesses, anyone who has a certificate in hand.
Okay, but I'm a little lost. Who are those people who have the groundwater that on the periphery that could be affected by this? Who are we talking about?
Well, it means there's a pause on new certificates being issued. So nobody who has an existing water supply is going to be cut off or lose their water. It's not affecting anyone today.
But to follow up on that, where do you have a sense of where in the Phoenix AMA growth is going to be slowed down because of this? Which specific areas that are relying on groundwater?
So what this modeling result shows, because of the unmet demand, is that everywhere in the Phoenix AMA where a new development or new certificate is sought, we will not be able to approve that certificate based solely on groundwater. There are other ways they can meet the certificate requirements. They can bring in non-groundwater resources from outside the AMAs. They can utilize long-term storage credits that are already under the ground for these purposes. They can use reclaimed water. There are a variety of ways for even those people to move forward with development. So it's difficult to say exactly where that's going to daylight. We know in the major cities where the designated providers exist, they've got large deltas between their supply and demand that's already approved. So much of the growth will continue there. And as the governor said, there are 80,000 lots out there around the AMA, not in any one part of the AMA, that have already been approved and can move forward.
You don't have a sense of exactly where those requests for underwater certificates from groundwater have been coming from and where that's likely to halt?
We have probably pending applications all throughout the valley, the Southeast Valley, in the lower Hassayampa sub-basin along the White Tank Mountains and in that area, kind of in the Buckeye area. We have those all over different parts of the active management area.
Yeah, Nick.
Another one for the, I think probably for Director Bushatsky. This is kind of a two-part. First, very briefly, when was the last time that this Phoenix AMA model was run and published?
So I happen to have my modeling manager here, so she would be happy to answer that question.
Happy.
Hello. The Phoenix model, as it is being released today, is a brand new model. But the SRV model, which is the one that the department has been using since 2009 to issue determinations of assured water supply, has been run as recently as December of 2022.
Okay, a brief follow-up, and if you wouldn't mind saying your name as well for those who don't know you. We know now it's June 1st, 2023, there's a 4% shortfall in the system. Presumably there's been, that shortfall has, it's gone from even to 1% to 3. It didn't just happen on May 31st. How far back do we think that in this region that threshold was crossed? Does that make sense? Question.
It makes sense. It makes sense. So my name is Emily Lo Dolce, for the record, and it's really we would have to do modeling iterations and try to take things out to tell you that exact answer. I couldn't answer that.
Do you have some idea? Was it last year? Was it 5 years ago?
So if you look at the history, and Emily went through this a little bit with folks already, you look back to the early 1900s, the groundwater levels were pretty stable. You got to about 1940, where the big pumps allowed major reductions of groundwater and major pumping of groundwater. We saw a sharp decline around 1980 with the groundwater code, with CEP water coming in. We started to level off. There was still a slight decline, Emily, I think about 30,000 acre feet a year deficit. And now we're at an inflection point, I think, projecting out this 100 years in the future of seeing those declines that we talked about. So it's varied over time. Certainly the groundwater code and the importation of CAP helped stabilize some of that. And now when you're projecting this additional demand moving forward, we're going to see a decline again.
How much? Hey, hold on, guys. Sorry, he has a question.
Tom, another question for you. Based on the comments that you made about the model is always evolving and some of the questions Howie was asking about CAP, is it reasonable for we in the public to assume that if significant cuts end up being made to the CAP after 2026, that this model and some of the projections might have to be forecasted downward? Or I know you can't speculate or you can't project exactly, but is there a possibility that that could lead to some downscaling of some of these projections as to how much water is available or how much growth there can be?
So when we know what the post-2026 operating criteria will be and for how long they will last, and that will relate to a better idea of what the cuts will be. Again, the cuts are going to be based on what the hydrology provides every year on the river and what the levels of Lake Powell and Lake Mead are. We will reassess this model and we'll see where that goes. But I don't think if you say there's a 100,000 acre foot cut to the CAP, that's a one-to-one, you can just project that down over 100 years and do the math. That's not the way it's going to work.
Ms. Hobbs, with the majority of Arizonans, including 72% of Republicans, 26% of Democrats, and 47% of independents saying it was likely that intentional failures on election day, the election that you ran, caused disenfranchisement of Republican voters, and there's ongoing lawsuits.
Next question,
No,
please. I'm not
no,
going to answer your
my
question. No.
'cause This is a
No.
much bigger issue than water. Why,
Does someone
why,
have a-
why should you be making decisions on Arizona's water future and decisions in general?
I'm not going to address your conspiracy theory, Jordan. Who's next?
All right, thank you, Green, right there. I'm wondering if anyone can address how much conservation $40 million can buy, or how much of a dent that will put in this 4% problem.
I think it's an important down payment, and it certainly is going to help those areas that rely on groundwater come up with alternative solutions so that they can continue to grow.
So this will be not just for the Maricopa AMA, this will be statewide, the 40 million we spread out, or is that just for the valley?
You're nodding. It's statewide, yeah.
Governor Massey here, this
But
is just one question, because everybody asks my questions every time, that's why I'm the last one to always ask. I had 3 questions, and the last one now, the 2 gentlemen asked them. It's like, is the Chamber of Commerce taking action with your office regarding people immigrating to, or migrating to Arizona, like moving in here from California, from other states? Are we taking that into consideration with the water shortages in the state of Arizona? And can you guarantee everyone in Arizona that is already living in their household not to have a water shortage, just like what happened in Villa Verde? Foothills, not that I'm the one, there's 2 different issues, I know, because the other, they didn't being municipalities, so it's a little bit different picture. But I'm just giving you like how they had a drought. Are we gonna go through that in the time in the future?
Nobody who has water is going to lose their water, and I'm glad you brought up Rio Verde because that's an example of a development that happened using loopholes in the groundwater management program, and that's why the groundwater management program is important. I know that there is a bipartisan solution moving through the legislature to address not just the Rio Verde water situation, but the underlying issue, and I am hopeful that it gets to my desk.
Thank you, Governor.
Governor,
Right there,
the
sis.
$40 million for conservation, it says here, is coming from ARPA monies.
Mm-hmm.
Is that some of the $50 million that you clawed back from full-day kindergarten last week, or is that from, where's that ARPA money?
We had a significant amount of ARPA dollars that we went through and allocated over this last week. So it was a much bigger pot than that 50 million.
But didn't Governor Ducey allocate all of it before he left?
No.
He thought he did.
Oh.
Well, there was a lot.
Did he leave on the table?
Yeah, we can get back to you with it. Yeah.
So it's part of the 210 clawback.
Right there.
This is, most of these efforts are within the Phoenix AMA, but we have a lot, when we talk about groundwater, we think of Cochise County.
Yep.
We think of, southeast Arizona. How do you plan on addressing groundwater situations there when they reject an AMA and we don't know what decisions they'll make in the future? They like local control, and you have Republicans even underscoring that in the House right now.
That is exactly what the Water Policy Council was established for, to help address these areas that are currently unregulated and unmanaged, to provide some water security in the future there as well.
Can we talk about the Water Policy Council you set up? You're talking about some bipartisan solutions, but the leaders in the House and the Senate, Ben Toma and Warren Peterson, have set up their own seemingly parallel Water Policy Council. Is that a sign that they don't really want to work in a bipartisan fashion on this, or that it's not happening?
They designated members to be part of the council. It is a bipartisan council, and there's crossover. So Representative Griffin, Senator Kerr, I believe, are on both, and so I hope there's some opportunity to work together and come up with truly bipartisan solutions to an issue that shouldn't be partisan at all.
Howie, you have questions?
Yeah, I have a question if we're kind of through with water. When you did your state of the state, your budget, you said we have to stop the bleeding from vouchers. You signed the budget that leaves the universal vouchers alone. You put out statements yesterday saying we have to stop the bleeding from the vouchers. What are you prepared to do? I mean, right now all we have is angry statement. What are you going to do about this other than say this has to stop?
We're looking at every option available. I am glad that we are able to get some significant reporting metrics approved through the budget process so that we can have data that shows how, we know that we knew going into this that this program was going to be out of control and has the potential to bankrupt our state. And I will put it squarely back on the Republican leaders who wouldn't put this on the negotiating table when we were doing the budget.
Okay, but you had leverage when you had the budget. What leverage do you have left? I mean, what, Prop 400, which is actually something you want, they don't? What leverage do you actually have? You had all your leverage when the budget was being negotiated.
Obviously, this number wasn't published before the budget, and we have a different set of facts that we're dealing with now in terms of the actual cost.
JLBC put out a statement this morning saying, we're not buying the ADE figures. And they're talking, maybe November they'll have something. Is there really any chance of doing anything before the end of this fiscal year to restrain the program, or is that ship sailed?
We're looking at every possible option.
All right, what is the status of the discussions on Prop 400? Is that something that, the clock's ticking, the session's almost over, is that something we're actually going to see get through the legislature before sine die?
I'm hopeful. Talks are still ongoing with legislative leadership, with the stakeholders in the business community and the municipalities.
What are the sticking points that are still out there between you and your negotiating partners in the House and Senate?
I don't think it's a good idea to negotiate it in the press. I think the sticking points are pretty well known. I continue to say this is a really important piece of legislation for the region, but for this whole state as well. And we're going to do what we can to get across the finish line.
Is it just a matter of changing the percentages in the plan that are out there, or are you pushing for light rail expansion money in this? Which
I am not pushing for that, no, and I don't think any of the stakeholders are.
All right, right over there.
Governor, I'd like to go back to water for
Yeah.
just a second. The Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, when it was first announced last year, $1 billion was going to be dedicated over a 3-year period. They've already cut back this year on how much it's supposed to get. Will it be will it be made whole at some point in time, and ultimately in 3 years get that full $1 billion or not?
That is the intent, and the money that was allocated last year hasn't been spent yet, and so a decision was made to reallocate those funds differently. And I think the bulk of what didn't go to WIFA was used for other water projects.
Since we kind of moved on to different topics, what do you think of signature verification 2022 election, where signature verification employees were clicking through signatures in 1, 2, 3 seconds? You wrote the election procedures manual with signature verification guidelines. What do you think of that? Is 1 second enough to verify a signature?
I don't have a comment on it. It's not something that is under my jurisdiction.
Why?
All right, guys,
It was under your jurisdiction. You ran an election. Why won't you answer election questions when a majority of Arizonans don't think that?
I'm sorry, Hank, can you just like...
Because you're not a reporter.
That's how we. Good
There's an
one.
obligatory
Why
question.
don't you tell Maricopa Downey that?
Okay, now I can ask you the question here. Just a few comments on your new Chief of Staff, Chad Campbell, and what does he bring to the table that Ellie Bowman didn't?
I am looking forward to moving forward with Chad as the Chief of Staff. He has a long legislative career, as you know, and we worked together in the legislature. We had some great bipartisan wins in the legislature, and I think he'll be a great addition to the phenomenal team that we have here on the 9th floor.
Okay, we got time for like 1 or 2 more. Anything else?
I think we've beaten it to
Well,
death.
I'll throw one out there,
Okay.
sorry. Scuttlebutt around the Capitol is that Ally's departure might have something to do with some perception that you could have gotten more in your first budget. I wonder if you would address that.
I am grateful to Ally's role through the transition, setting up this administration and setting it for success. And not only that, but her time as the Assistant Secretary of State. She's a phenomenal public servant, and I'm looking forward to see what she does next.
But does her departure have anything to do with the budget?
Ally tendered her resignation. I accepted it, and we are moving forward.
If you could.
Why don't we hear
Would you pick her again?
Governor, would
I,
you pick her again?
You can start it all over again. Would you pick her again as your first chief of staff?
I am not looking back, I'm looking ahead, so.
All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. It's a stress fracture. We can say I kicked people, that's fine.
All right, thank you, everybody.
All right, that comes to an end with Mayor Ross, ladies and gentlemen.